Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've been watching the Azure update feed, say between January 22nd and February 6th, 2026, you already know why we're here.
Oh yeah, it has been an incredibly dense couple of weeks for the platform,
Dense is, I think, putting it mildly.
for sure. Usually we see, a mix of maybe some UI tweaks, minor regional rollouts. This cycle, though, is heavy. I mean, we are looking at fundamental changes to the compute layer.
And some really significant AI model integrations.
Huge integrations, plus some very, very strict networking updates you need to be aware of.
So we've gone through all the documentation. We've pulled out 25 specific updates. We're going to cover everything from the new V7 silicon hitting data centers all the way to retirement notices that, and we're not kidding, will break your production environment if you ignore them.
I think the theme here is really infrastructure and intelligence.
Mm.
On one side, you've got the raw metal, new AMD and Intel chips hitting general availability.
And on the other, the application layer is getting way smarter. We're talking Anthropic integrations, edge logic capabilities, things like that.
Exactly.
And a quick note before we jump in. We know who's listening. Your architects, your SREs, your developers. We're not going to waste your time explaining what a VM is.
Right. No car analogies to explain latency, I promise.
We're just going to stick to the specs, the version numbers, and, the real architectural implications of all these updates.
Okay, let's get straight into the stack.
So we're starting at the top, the AI and data layer. The headline that really dominated the feed this week, it involves Anthropic.
It has to. Cloud Opus 4.6 has arrived. And it's not just, another API endpoint.
Whoa, it's a full-on platform integration.
That's right. The big news here is that Azure Databricks has launched general availability for Claude Opus 4.6, and it's running via Mosaic AI model serving.
Okay, so let's position this because there are a lot of models out there. Why does Opus 4.6 specifically matter for a Databricks user?
It really comes down to the use case. Opus 4.6 is Anthropic's heavy hitter. It's their current state-of-the-art model for really complex reasoning and, maybe more importantly, for agentic coding.
Agentic coding.
Yeah, if you're building automated pipelines where the AI needs to write code, debug that code, and then iterate on it without a human in the loop, Opus is the model you want.
And by serving it through Mosaic AI instead of just, say, calling an external API, what do you gain?
Two things: governance and latency. With Mosaic AI model serving, you're hosting that model endpoint inside your own data boundary.
So no data leaves your environment.
Exactly. You're not sending proprietary data out to some public API in the wild. You get much better control over rate limits, access controls, all of it.
And it wasn't just Databricks. I saw Microsoft Foundry was also involved.
Correct. Claude Opus 4.6 is now in public preview on Microsoft Foundry too. Foundry is really aiming to be that enterprise-ready harness for these, high-end models.
Okay, staying on Databricks for a second. The model is big news, but there was a platform-level update that I think might impact ops teams even more.
You have to be talking about serverless workspaces.
Yes, hitting general availability.
This is a huge shift in the operating model, a really big deal.
So serverless is a word that gets thrown around a lot. In the context of Databricks, what does this actually take off an engineer's plate?
It takes away the cluster management. I mean, historically, if you were a Databricks admin, you spent so much time just managing the compute plane.
Picking driver nodes, worker nodes, auto-scaling policies.
All of it. And dealing with startup times. Serverless workspaces basically turns Databricks into a true SaaS experience.
So the compute is just ephemeral and managed by the platform for you?
Exactly. Pre-configured serverless compute, default storage. You just bring your code and your data, and the platform figures out how much compute it needs. It pretty much eliminates that cold start penalty.
Which frees up the engineering team to focus on data logic. And that actually leads perfectly into the third Databricks update, AgentBricks.
Yes, the Azure Databricks AgentBricks Knowledge Assistant. Quite a name.
A very long name, but the utility seems pretty high. This is basically a RAG accelerator, right? Retrieval augmented generation.
That's a great way to put it. It's a set of pre-built components, so you can create and deploy AI agents right inside the platform. Instead of you having to manually wire up a vector database, an embedding model, a retrieval system.
AgentBricks gives you those building blocks out of the box.
It does. And because it's native, it automatically respects all your underlying data permissions from the Unity catalog.
That's the key.
It is. It just massively shortens that development loop for building internal AI tools.
All right, let's move down the stack. We're going from software to silicon. Segment 2 is all about compute, and we have a massive hardware refresh happening.
It's a dual vendor refresh,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
We're seeing the V7 generation of virtual machines coming from both AMD and Intel.
Okay, let's start with Team Red, the AMD updates.
The AMD V7 series, so we're talking about the DASVIC 7, E7, and FASVIC 7 families, are all now generally available. These are running on the new Azure AMD Turin processors.
Okay, so for those thinking about migrating, what's the performance delta here?
It's pretty significant, especially in density and performance per watt. You have the usual breakdown, D for general purpose, E for memory optimized.
And F for compute optimized.
Right. So if you have a workload that's just purely CPU bound, moving from a V5 to a Turin-based V7 is almost certainly going to give you better throughput for the same core count.
And Intel is in the mix as well.
Yep. Intel's rolling out their 7th gen. The DL's V7, DL's V7, and SV7 VMs are now in public preview. These are powered by the Intel Xeon 6 processors.
That's Granite Rapids.
Codenamed Granite Rapids. That's the one, the high core count architecture. So yeah, whether you're an AMD shop or an Intel shop, the V7 era is officially here.
And while we're talking silicon, we should probably touch on confidential computing.
We should. It's often seen as a niche for, banking or healthcare, but the footprint is expanding really aggressively.
So what's the update there?
The AMD V6 confidential VMs, so the DCA and EK series, have expanded their GA status to 11 new regions.
And which regions are we talking? This is usually driven by data sovereignty laws.
It is. The list includes Canada, Norway, Italy, and Germany.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal for GDPR compliance and, local banking regulations in the EU.
Right, so if you're an architect in Frankfurt, you can now get that hardware-level encryption locally.
Without having to backhaul your data.
Yep. Now, before we leave compute, there was one smaller, but I think really vital update for Java developers.
The Azure Command Launcher for Java.
Yep.
Public preview.
Now, most Java devs I know have pretty strong opinions on how to launch the JVM. What's the value of an Azure-specific launcher?
It's really an ergonomics play for containers. If you're running Java on AKS or Azure Container Apps, you often hit those melee limit issues.
Ah, the classic container-aware problem. The container has a limit, but the JVM doesn't know it.
Exactly, and then you get an OM kill. This launcher is optimized specifically for Azure's infrastructure. It tunes the JVM startup and runtime params to match the container's environment right out of the box.
Let's move up to orchestration, segment 3, Kubernetes and storage. And there are some pretty big control plane updates for AKS.
2 key updates, yeah. One for multi-cluster managers and one for the security teams. Let's start with Fleet Manager.
Okay, Fleet Manager, that's the tool for managing a bunch of AKS clusters as if they were one. What's new?
It now supports namespace-scoped resource placement. This is in preview.
And why is that distinction, namespace scope, so important?
Well, before this, resource propagation was kind of a blunt instrument. You pushed a config to a whole cluster. This gives you really fine-grained control.
So I can pick a specific config map or a secret and push it only to certain namespaces across my entire fleet.
Precisely. It sounds critical for multi-tenancy. If you're running a platform for 10 different internal teams, you can update Team A's config across all regions without ever touching Team B's stuff. It just reduces the blast radius.
Okay, and the security update.
AKS Deployment Safeguards has hit general availability. And the big news here is native support for pod security standards.
This is all about enforcement, I take it.
It is. We're moving past just, auditing or suggesting best practices. This feature lets you actually enforce consistent pod security configs across all your clusters.
So if a developer tries to deploy a pod with, say, privileged true in a restricted namespace?
The safeguard just blocks it or flags it, depending on your policy. It puts those guardrails right into the platform control plane.
Let's talk storage inside Kubernetes. Stateful workloads are always a challenge.
Always. Azure Container Storage v2.1.0 is now GA, and it's trying to solve some of that. The headline feature is native integration with Elastic SAN.
Right, Elastic SAN. That's the service trying to bridge the gap between on-prem SAN performance and cloud storage.
It is. But maybe more importantly for the ops folks, this release adds an on-demand installation model.
Meaning the storage driver isn't always running, taking up resources.
Exactly. The footprint is smaller. The goal is to lower the resource consumption of the storage orchestration layer itself so you're not burning expensive CPU cycles just to manage storage logic.
Moving to data protection, there were 2 updates that sound similar but target very different layers.
Correct. First up, for high-performance file storage, Azure NetApp Files has a new Elastic Zone Redundant Service Level, or Elastic ZRS. It's in preview.
We know ZRS means 3 copies across 3 zones. What makes this one elastic?
It's the availability guarantee. The promise is continuous data access with 0 data loss, even if an entire availability zone goes down. This is for your mission-critical SAP HANA workloads, things where you cannot afford a failover gap.
And the second update.
This one's for Azure Disk Backup. It's a feature called Vaulted Backups, and it's in a private preview right now.
Vaulted sounds like isolation.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
These are crash-consistent snapshots of your disks, but instead of living in the same resource group as the source disk, they're stored in a totally separate resource group within your tenant.
So this is basically a defense against ransomware or accidental deletion. If my primary resource group gets wiped,
Your backups are logically separated in that vault. It provides that air gap logic without having to actually move the data off cloud.
Okay, segment 4, networking and security. This is where we see some really interesting stuff happening. I want to start with Azure Monitor pipeline data transformations.
This is in public preview, and it's arguably a networking and a data feature all in one.
Why is this such a big deal for observability?
It's all about the cost model. Traditionally, you ingest telemetry, you store it, and then you run queries to filter out the noise.
Right, but you're paying to ingest and store all that noise in the first place.
Exactly. You're paying for gigabytes of info-level logs you never even look at. This feature lets you shape, filter, and transform that telemetry before it even gets ingested into Azure Monitor.
So it's a direct FinOps tool. You scrub the data stream before the meter even starts running.
That's it. You're moving the ETL logic upstream to the pipeline itself.
Next up, a hardware update in the networking space. The Azure Virtual Network Routing Appliance.
Also in public preview, this is for users who are pushing some serious packets.
So how is this different from just, deploying a Linux VM to act as a router?
It's the hardware. This uses specialized, purpose-built hardware for private connectivity between VNets. It offers much lower latency and higher throughput than a standard VM-based solution.
So if I have massive data replication between VNets or a real-time financial app.
This is the SKU you want. It gets rid of the hypervisor overhead and any noisy neighbor risks.
Let's talk WF's web application firewalls. 2 updates for the Application Gateway WAF.
Right. First, default rule set 2.2 is now generally available. Pretty straightforward. It's got the latest Microsoft Threat Intelligence updates. An easy win.
But the second update, this one solves a very specific headache. Rate limiting grouped by X forwarded for headers.
This is in preview, and it is absolutely critical for anyone running behind a CDN.
Okay, so walk us through the failure scenario this is fixing.
Sure. So imagine your app is behind a CDN, like Akamai or Cloudflare. To your WAF, all the incoming traffic looks like it's coming from the CDN's IP addresses.
Right.
So if you try to apply a rate limit, say you block any IP that sends 100 requests a minute, you're just going to end up blocking the CDN.
And take down your whole site.
You take down your whole site. This update lets the way inspect the X forwarded for header, which contains the original client IP, and apply the logic to that IP instead.
That is a huge quality of life improvement. And quickly, a mention for the NAT gateway.
The standard V2 NAT gateway is now GA.
What's V2 bring?
It brings zone redundancy and dual stack connectivity. So both IPv4 and IPv6 at the same price as the old standard SKU.
So if you're on standard, there's literally no reason not to upgrade.
It's a no regrets migration.
Correct.
Okay, we're on to segment 5, the need to know section. Retirements, regional updates. We call this the eat your vegetables segment.
Because if you ignore it, it's not going to be good for you later. And we have a major deadline for Python users this week.
What's the situation? If you are running Azure Functions on Python 3.nen, you need to mark your calendar for October 1st, 2026.
That's the end of support date.
That is the end of support. After that day, security updates stop. You have to upgrade to Python 3.13.
October might feel like it's a long way away, but for a big system.
It's tomorrow. And we all know Python versioned upgrades can break dependencies. You need to get this into your backlog now.
The next retirement is even closer. We're talking Cypher suites.
April 1st, 2026. Azure Front Door and Azure CDN Classic will stop supporting specific weak DHE Cypher suites.
So we're talking about things like TLSD Herselweiths, the old stuff.
The old stuff. This isn't going to impact modern browsers, but it will impact legacy clients. Old IO key devices, kiosks on an ancient OS, things like that.
So check your logs. If you see DHE negotiation, you have until April.
You do. And one more quick retirement. The preview feature Send VM client data to event hubs and storage retires July 31st, 2026. You'll need to migrate to the modern Azure Monitor agent paths for that.
All right, let's close out with some geography. Microsoft is expanding the map.
They've announced a new planned data center region, Thailand South.
And what's the status on that?
It's currently in the in-development or private preview phase. But this is a really strategic move for Southeast Asia. It's all about data residency for the banking and government sectors there.
And a final quick nod to the database world, PostgreSQL Flexible Server.
Yeah, new minor versions are supported from 18.1 all the way down to 13.23. The beauty of Flex Server is these security patches get applied automatically during your maintenance window.
Which is why we pay for managed services.
It is indeed.
That brings us to the end of the list. That was a lot to cover. When you look at all of these updates together, the V7 Silicon, the agentic AI, the WF logic, what's the big takeaway?
I think the takeaway is that Azure is just hardening the platform. This wasn't a week of flashy UI features. It was about stronger silicon, more resilient storage with Elastic ZRS, and stricter security with pod security standards.
It feels like the platform is maturing, tightening the bolts.
Exactly. It's focusing on that heavy infrastructure you need for the next wave of AI and data workloads.
And I'll just reiterate the call to action on retirements. Python 3.0, October 1st. Don't be that person scrambling in September.
Please don't.
So before we sign off, I want to leave you with a thought. We talked about Azure Monitor letting you transform data before ingestion.
Right.
And we talked about WFs filtering based on XFF headers right at the gateway. We're seeing this distinct architectural shift where the intelligence, or at least the filtering logic, is moving to the very edge of the infrastructure intake.
Yeah, the edge is getting smarter, so the back end can be leaner. It's true.
So the question for you is, how much of your current back-end processing logic, the stuff you're paying compute hours for right now, could actually be moved upstream to the ingestion pipeline to save costs? Are you processing junk data that you could have just dropped at the door?
That is the million-dollar question, literally for some companies.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next update.